Have you ever heard of truth and reconciliation and been curious about what the term actually means? The abuse of Indigenous people is not something that happened a long time ago at all. The people of Canada are literally just beginning to understand the difficult past that Canada's Indigenous population has been forced to live through. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission was established in order to address these issues. However, this hasn't solved the issue yet. Last week's stabbing spree at the Indigenous community in the Canadian province of Saskatchewan is living proof of this. Hey guys, welcome back to Darkness Unraveled. In today's video, we are going to talk about the dark, dirty secret of Canada. So stay with us till the end of this video so you don't miss out on any of this information. But before we proceed, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click on the bell symbol so that you don't miss out on any of our wonderful videos in the future. Let's get started. May 2021, skeletal remains of more than 200 Indigenous children, some of whom were as young as 3 years old, were discovered at the site of a former residential school in the western Canadian province of British Columbia. Indigenous peoples across Canada are struggling to come to terms with this horrifying discovery. The chief of Tk'emts-Sekwepemc First Nation, Roseanne Casimir, made the shocking announcement that the skeletal remains had been discovered on the grounds of the Kamloops Indian Residential School. She described the discovery as an unthinkable loss that was spoken about but never documented. Casimir stated that, to the best of their knowledge, these youngsters who have gone missing are presumed to have died in mysterious circumstances. There were even some who were only 3 years old. We went out of our way to find a means to verify our understanding, which is that Tk'emts-Sekwepemc is the ultimate resting place for the children who were lost. We did this out of the utmost respect and love for those children and their families. According to Danielle Morrison, an Anishinaabe lawyer, the revelation of the mass grave has sparked a collective anguish and trauma for Indigenous people across Canada. She told Al Jazeera that right now, fires are being lit, pipes are being lit, and ceremonies are being held to honor the lives of those wonderful youngsters who had been taken from this world too soon. The National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation at the University of Manitoba also issued a statement in which it claimed that this news is a striking reminder of the barbarity committed by the residential school system and the wounds carried by communities, families, and survivors into the present. Over the course of more than a century, the Government of Canada employed a policy of forcibly removing thousands of Indigenous children from their families and forcing them to attend residential schools. The purpose of these schools was to cut off the children's ties to their families and culture and to assimilate them into white Canadian society. A cycle of intergenerational trauma was established for Indigenous people all across Canada as a result of the schools, which were run by churches from the 1870s until 1996. The schools were riddled with physical, mental, and sexual abuse, neglect, and other forms of violence. The Kamloops Indian Residential School was established in 1890 and was operated by the Catholic Church. It eventually became the largest school in Canada's system of residential schools, with a peak enrollment of 500 students in the early 1950s. The residential schools were founded with the sole intention of eliminating the Indian from the child, Morrison stated. There was no other reason for their existence. It was for the purpose of assimilation of Indigenous people in Canada and, in essence, to get rid of the Indian problem, as one of the superintendents at the time put it. Karen Joseph, the CEO of the charitable organization Reconciliation Canada, stated that the discovery in Kamloops marked the first time a whispered knowing was made real, and that its impact is being felt all over the country, particularly by residential school survivors. We are aware that none of the children who attended the Kamloops Indian Residential School were originally from the city of Kamloops, despite the fact that we are discussing youngsters who attended the Kamloops Indian Residential School at the moment. Karen explained that this was the purpose of residential schools. They took children as far away from their families and communities as possible. Cultural genocide. More than 150,000 Indigenous children were coerced into attending residential schools in Canada, according to a report by a National Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was released in 2015. The report called this action a cultural genocide. Concerning the children who vanished without a trace, the panel stated in its report that the issue of what happened to their loved ones and where they were laid to rest has tormented families and communities. There was never an attempt made during the entirety of Canada's residential school system to keep track of the number of children who passed away while they were enrolled in the school on an annual basis. This is something that is shocking to learn. According to the Commission's findings, More than 4,100 children who died at the schools as a result of illness or an accident have been recognized up to this point, but attempts are still ongoing to identify more. This demonstrates how the legacy of the residential school system continues to impact the lives of residential school survivors and the families of those who never returned home. The Government of Canada issued an official apology for the residential school system in 2008, and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stated that the discovery of the bodies of the children is a heartbreaking reminder of that dark and awful chapter of our country's history. Nevertheless, critics have pointed out that survivors of residential schools have been obliged to challenge the Government of Canada in order to seek accountability and restitution for what happened to them. The government had spent 3.2 million Canadian dollars defending a group of survivors of the St. Anne's Indian Residential School, an Ontario residential school that was riddled with cruelty, in court over the course of a decade. Despite the fact that Canada's residential schools have been shut down, injustice against Indigenous people doesn't end here. Indigenous children continue to be removed from their homes in disproportionate numbers all around the country. Over half of the children who were placed in foster care in 2016 were Indigenous, despite the fact that Indigenous children made up only 7.7% of the entire population of the country. The data was derived from the census. Karen made the statement that this is not a historical occurrence. This continues to this day. The loss of our children and the loss of our people for no other reason than the color of their skin. And as you might already know, just a week ago, another act of violence has occurred against the Indigenous community. The police received a call of what would happen to be one of the deadliest mass killings in Canadian history. Two brothers, Miles and Damien Sanderson, barged into a Canadian Indigenous reserve and killed 10 people and injured at least 18 others. This is the most recent attack on Indigenous people in Canada, leaving victims, their families, and law enforcement perplexed about numerous crucial issues that remain unsolved. Most significantly, what was the motive? Some say this was due to the drug and alcohol abuse of the attackers. However, others think there is more to it. What do you think? I would like to conclude this video by saying that cultures and civilizations on every continent have arisen, developed, interacted with one another, and perished over the course of human history. Not one culture on Earth can claim to be the one and only supreme culture. Don't you agree? And that's it for today, guys. We sincerely hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please click on the like button and share it with your friends and family. If you have any questions or comments, please share them with us in the comment space below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to see even more of our incredible videos. You can also check out our other videos that have been specially selected for you. We'll catch up in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.